All right. All right, guys. Welcome back.
Time to cook up.
Happy Monday.
Yeah.
Market Mondays is back. Ian, it's in the old studio.
Yep.
Facts.
The weather's so nice in New York, you have to return.
I have to. Maybe once a month. Shout out to everybody in New York I've been seeing. Everybody from the Bronx.
I'm about to say, you made your way uptown?
Real quick.
Shout out to the
James Dolan. I need a meeting. What's up?
Yes.
They looked all right last night. They looked all right.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
That's a fact.
Man, a lot to cover this week. Thursday, we have part 4 of our series, and this one is going to be how to teach your kids about money. So we're going to be doing it from an educational perspective, and we're going to be doing it with Travis Brown, Principal Travis Brown, who he was the one that helped develop the curriculum with us, New York City principal. So that's been a big topic for a long time. People have been asking about, teaching children about money. So we're going to be going over that this Thursday. So for all parents, grandparents, soon to be parents, vitally important information.
Yeah, and Travis comes with a depth of knowledge, not only in education, but he has a financial background too. Before he went into education, which he saw that there was a need for it. So just an incredible dude, and it's going to be. These past 3 have been incredible. This one is a nice way to make it a 4-part series. It's going to be incredible as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then
Y'all got a great series going. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
And then Wednesday, we're going to be back with Blackout. And that's 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Times. And let us know what topics and guests. We're going to start having some more guests come on. Black. I know we haven't had guests in a while, but we've been working. We got some guests that's going to be coming up. Because, it's always good to have outside opinions on different things. But shout out to everybody that's been tapped into Blackout. And check us out in Toronto. We will be in your area this weekend for the M2 Income. And then South Beach, the Market Mondays crew. We'll be in Miami this week for
Special
Robin
event.
Hood. The Robin Hood convention. So shout out to everybody that's out there. Shout out to Vlad 10F and shout out to the whole entire team.
That's a story in just the power of relationships, right? We did the interview. He enjoyed the interview. He enjoyed having dialogue with us. Every time that they have something, he's like, "Hey, we want you guys to come."
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for sure. So shout out to Vlad 10F and the whole Robin Hood family.
Yes, come on.
Ian, any announcements?
Yes, if you want to get rich from the market, go to ianinvest.com. Stock club prices were released last night. I think it's like 92 prices. Y'all forced me to put Palantir and Meta in there, so I got y'all on that. If I made y'all money, please put yes in chat. Shout out to everybody I've seen in New York this weekend. I appreciate y'all. And to all my content creators out there, it's okay to work harder. Be appreciative for what you have and work harder. That's all I'll say.
Work harder.
Facts.
Who cares? Work harder.
Facts.
Yes. EP some shit. Learn how to hang lights. Learn how to work the dolly. Push pull shots. Hey, call Dennis and get some ideas on how to work harder.
Do it all.
It's not going to be easy.
That's a fact. Troy.
Yes. Shout out to everybody that is tapped in. Shout out to everybody that's been doing their own research. This is our disclaimer. Our content is intended to be used and must be used for informational purposes only. It is very important to do your own analysis before making any investment based on your own personal circumstances. You should take independent financial advice from a professional in connection with, or please independently research and verify any information that you find on our show and wish to rely upon, whether for the purpose of making an investment decision or otherwise. This is a message that's brought to you by the good brothers at Earn Your Leisure and the good brother Ian Dunlap, the master investor himself. Yes. Do the research, share the research, spread love, show love. Let's make some money, y'all.
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna be talking about a lot of different stuff, and we have a guest that will be joining us later in the programming. Yes, that's going to be a very entertaining. Byron Donalds, Republican congressman from the state of Florida. But let's start off with SpaceX.
Yeah.
Right. So what's your thoughts on the SpaceX launch, Tesla Robo Taxi, and Tesla Optimus robot? So it was a big week last week for Tesla across the board, Elon Musk companies, and man, they have so much going on their robot. That was a very impressive display. 2 Chainz. We played that video on Instagram with 2 Chainz. And actually, let's play the video now. Actually, we have another video that kind of just goes over the robot in full detail. So if we could just play that video.
Yeah.
All right. So that just gives some context to the robot situation. But there's a lot going on with Elon Musk's companies these days. So what's the deal with SpaceX and Tesla specifically?
I know over the past year I've been critical of Elon, but man, he had a hell of a week last week. I know Tesla stock fell, but I think he did a good job at the Robotaxi idea. I know that the director from iRobot is upset. You should have patented the IP and you should have rolled the shit out after iRobot. But I think he had a great week. The SpaceX launch was amazing. To be able to take the chopsticks and put the rocket back in frame, looked like some stuff James Cameron would do in Avatar 3. The robot at 30,000, I don't love, but if they drop the price and it gets to 15 or 20, not bad. And I've been incredibly critical of him, but over the past weekend, I got to get a kid credit, man. Like his engineering background, his level of ambition, his drive to see these projects through, I think is nothing short of amazing. So I have to give him full credit. I know the stock dropped. It's at 219 right now. If it falls to 212, I would love to pick some shares up there. I think the drop was unfair. I wasn't overwhelmed at the Robotaxi idea at first, but give it 3 or 4 years. I think it can pan out to be pretty profitable. So we'll have to give it time, though.
Yeah, this is a conversation I feel like we've had on here maybe a few months ago when I was talking about the innovation inside of Tesla. And the question kind of came up like, when will people feel like this is something that they absolutely need?
Yeah.
And so when I saw the robot, I was like, that's fly. That's really incredible. I mean, Optimus is just the voice recognition, the way it can engage. I'm like, this is incredible. But then you hear the price tag at 20,000. That makes it exclusive for only a certain population.
Yeah.
If, like you said, if they could bring the price down, it's dope. I think the technology is dope. The SpaceX launch was, I mean, that's incredible.
Phenomenal.
To have a rocket leave orbit and come back and land on its own. I mean, this is the 5th time they've tried it. It's the first time that it's worked. Space exploration obviously is something that we were educated on. Shout out to Aisha Bo about that. That was incredible. And the Robotaxi, it's that I can see. It's just the trust factor. Right?
Yeah.
People are so used to going into automobiles that have steering wheels and have pedals.
Yeah.
And so now imagine going into a vehicle that has neither. And so that control that you have to give up, that mentality of like, if something goes wrong, I could swerve out the way, I can press the brakes. That's kind of eliminated based on artificial intelligence and sensors, really. So I'm not sure about that just yet. Can I see a world where people will use it? I can. I just don't know if the trust factor will be there. But ultimately, when I watch all these things, outside of anything that he said from a political standpoint, if we're just talking the business, this is the living day Tony Stark.
I agree.
Like, this is Tony Stark in the flesh. If you've watched any of the Iron Man films and you're talking about a CEO who's brash, who's arrogant, who has genius level ideas and innovation, this is it. This is just on the business level. He's doing it, right? You start thinking, you start putting things together. You have the Neuralink piece. You have these robots. You have the satellites. They said Sam is the most dangerous. It's 1A and 1B.
He's the one.
He's the one. Yeah.
And from a business perspective, to bundle all of these launches together to have an amazing week in media. I know this stock got destroyed, but to put out these 3 products at this time, and dominate the news cycle is, I think, from a business standpoint, something you have to look to try and emulate. So he's done a great job there.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's definitely, not the most likable person, and I've been on record to say that, I don't agree with the vast majority of things that he says or does. But he's definitely a very intelligent person, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be a racist and still be intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was one of the great whites for sure.
The great whites.
For sure. So
for real.
And I don't know if he's racist or not, but I mean, it would lend to that by a lot of his actions and a lot of things that he says. You would make an assumption that you probably lends towards that side of the aisle. But nonetheless, he's a very intelligent person when it comes to this type of stuff, and he's the most powerful person in the world for a reason. He's the richest person in the world for a reason. You don't get that by accident. I mean, his father was rich. But it still takes a lot to become the richest person in the world. Yeah. So definitely impressive what he's been able to accomplish. These robots are going to be interesting for sure. If you can get these for 20,000, 30,000, and I saw a Chinese company said they're going to start selling it for 15,000.
Right.
And that's actually even more durable. I seen like you can push them, you can do everything with them. So now it's just going to be a race to see how cheap you can get and how better. So I mean, who knows? In a couple of years, they might have these things for $5,000, and it's
that would be crazy.
You're talking about a personal chef, a personal assistant, bartender, variety of different things. I think that's something that is scary for sure, because whenever you have artificial intelligence, you're not 100% sure. This is all just a trial and error, right? We don't really know the long-term effects of it. We've seen movies, and movies I think are an indicator of what usually happens in the future, and that's pretty alarming because it looks just like iRobot. So if iRobot's an indicator of what could potentially happen, we know how that played out. We know how the Terminator played out. We know how all these other movies played out. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that cinema lends a view into the future. This is why we're not really surprised about this, because we've already been prepped for it. Yeah. So that's pretty scary, right? If you have somebody babysitting your kids, and who knows, they might have a glitch, right? But
at least you're going to blame the abuse on the robot and not you.
Yeah, but before we turn it, in terms of the stock, why do you think the stock falls? Right? Are people not enthusiastic about it?
The stock fell because of the Robo Taxis.
People weren't impressed.
They weren't impressed with the Robo Taxis. Yeah,
right.
And when you hype something up like this and the rollout isn't okay, the Robo Taxi job, great design. Even though he took it from iRobot, there were no partnerships announced. Give me a partnership with UAE, or at least low hanging fruit Uber or Waymo or Venmo, anybody. No partnerships announced. Yeah. So, I was it too aggressive of a sell off?
Yeah, that was my thing, right?
The 219.
Yeah. Was the disappointment in the Robo Taxi justifiable for that type of drop, or is it?
I don't think so.
Some of his other personal level, what he's been out here doing.
I'll play Elon's advocate for a moment and say, what if he's not racist? But he's aligning with someone who could perceive to be as his way in to then take over. I think Elon may be agnostic across the board. Now, of course, I know his dad was South African, apartheid. I get it. I think he's playing the part of whom he can attach himself to so he can be the better version of Dick Cheney.
All right. So now let's talk about some more money topics. Bitcoin.
Yep.
We haven't talked about Bitcoin in a while, but it's on the move. It's at 65,000, and it's been hovering around that for months now. For about 6 months, really.
Yeah.
Up and down, but around, hasn't been able to break out of that price pattern yet. So do you think Bitcoin is going to be on the move this month?
Nope. Love the question from the audience. Appreciate you. It's probably not going to move until after election. If one candidate wins, it will move a lot faster, have a precipitous uptick. But I won't tell you which one. If you want to know which one, go to IONQ.com, join the Red Corner Stock Club. I'll say that. Gatekeeping and stonewalling. But no, and truth be told, there's no reason with BlackRock owning the majority of it and Michael Saylor, there's no reason for it to move to the upside. I think one of the big lessons that we have to be mindful of, put it in chat, asymmetric risk to reward. Why would I want to buy a 65 or 67 if the cap is 10,000 above that? You have to wait.
Yeah, and if anybody like studies the chart, if you look at it the past 90 days, when we talk about consolidation, that's what it looks like when it's trading inside of a range, and that's what it's doing.
That's all it's doing.
Yeah. And you know, there was a guy who talked about the World Liberty Financial, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Who once called it a scam, but now has created a committee for it. So yeah, I'm with you. We know and we've seen since, I would say probably since 2017, how crypto moves when it has consolidation, when it has, I guess, these crypto winters. I don't think we're there. We talked about what happens after halving, and we saw the event, and we saw it go down to 20 and climb back up to 70.
Yeah.
So we're in a consolidation phase right now. We'll see what the catalyst is. Maybe it is somebody that gets elected, or maybe not. But it's always interesting.
And also, at the time when Bitcoin became mainstream, the hedge funds had found a way to steal Kathy's idea to make Tesla Nvidia pop. Now, most of the funds have sold those that are anti-BlackRock or competitors to BlackRock. They've wrote Nvidia for Bitcoin-like gains. So why have the drawdown of Bitcoin hypothetically, which I think is an amazing asset to hold long term? But if I can pull out 300-400% out of Nvidia over 3 or 4 years, why have a place there if I'm competing against BlackRock? You have to understand all the pieces on the board. So at the one time in history, Bitcoin was able to give you 100% return, and it was feasible on an institutional basis. Now you have maybe 3 or 4 players that they can divert those funds into. That's why Bitcoin has been flat. Same with XRP. XRP at one time could have moved up higher until Larry Fink decides to get his hand on XRP and shake the table. They're going to remain flat. Now, if I can take Nvidia as an American equity, and now Jensen is the new darling, and Blackwell now costs damn near 600 grand, great. You have to realize, and please write this in chat, understand who the competitors are in the equities. No stock is just competing against the indexes, and they're competing against the entire landscape. So,
for sure. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll keep an eye on crypto, but yeah, it hasn't really done too much over the last 6 months. Just kind of,
but still hold it for the long term. It's a great hedge against the American dollar. But you should have bought it at 20 when I told you to.
Okay. So let's talk about Nvidia. Before we talk about Nvidia, another shout out to Chris Gotti and Clash TV, man. They really revolutionized, talking about business. What they're about to do with the street ball culture, grassroots basketball culture is revolutionary. They put together a street ball league where they actually had a draft and combine yesterday. And we saw Emery there. Shout out to Emery.
Yeah, shout out to Emery.
Shout out to Emery, man. Just great energy. Every time we see him, seen him a few times now. And every time we see him, just great energy. He's talking about when he first moved to Brooklyn in '88 and told us the story.
Significant year.
Yeah. Shout out to Emery, man. Some social media influencers took to the Soldier Boy challenge over the weekend, but we were actually with the real guys that really survived it. So
shout to Emery, shout to Gotti. I like
that's important. That's important.
Real quick, humbly.
I missed it. Shout out, but nah, just like a humble dude, bro. Just in the cut, just taking in like what we saw, and what we saw was pretty incredible, man. Just seeing guys who have a love for something like basketball, given an opportunity. Like imagine, I'm thinking maybe 100 people show up.
Yeah,
it was thousands of applications to even be at the tryouts. 500 people showed up. 500 just to have an opportunity to continue their career in basketball. It's incredible. Shout out to Gotti. Shout out to the whole team.
Clash TV. Shout out to Clash TV.
Yeah, shout out to the Clash
and everything
TV.
that they got going on, man. Just really impressive. Download the app,
please.
Okay.
Most of the guys who are legends in that space are really humble, given their prior.
Yeah, if they actually did it. Yeah. But Draco. Everybody screaming Draco.
Oh my Lord.
Draco. Okay, so
that's crazy. As we speaking.
Yeah, he just sent it to us.
That's crazy.
Shout out to Gotti. Nvidia is a stock that famously, I think it was 2 months ago when we spoke about on Market Mondays, and you said you called for it to hit lows in the low hundreds, high 90s. I think it bottomed out at 98.
Yeah, got that in the intraday 92.
And then now it's at hovering around 140.
Told you. Told you, boy.
Shout out to Big Soldier. So that was something that, if you watched Market Mondays and you actually implemented on the information, you probably made some money off of it for sure. But I was watching, different publications, and they're saying, like, even on Nvidia's options, it's reached levels that they've never seen before as far as how much money has been poured into Nvidia options. And now, they have some news as far as their DGX B200 featuring 8 Blackwell GPUs. So, let's talk about that moment in history, calling Nvidia's bottom, why it's important to implement on time, and also the outlook for Nvidia going forward. Because, like I said, there's so much money in options right now. It's a lot that's going on with Nvidia. So people are, they're thinking, okay, does it still have upside potential?
So I think first thing first, I appreciate everyone who listens to the show and who's in Red Panda. If I made you money, please put yes in chat. I will say definitively it's better to go with what I'm saying than to be adverse and not listen to it, for one. Even 3 years ago, the clip came up about Microsoft being the stock of the decade. That was before the OpenAI involvement. When you've been doing this as long as I have, and regardless of what people may think about the hot takes or some of the talks on Blackout, like, I'm great at this shit. If I'm doing the work for you and everyone keep asking, like, where's the hedge fund? And I keep saying, hey, Market Mondays is the hedge fund in advance. Just listen to the advice that is being given. I mean, it's amazing to be able to call this out, for you to take advantage of it. Now, the price where it is now, there is no asymmetric risk to the upside. So you have to wait for a moment for that company to then pull back at a price that is favorable to you and the institutions. Now, if we're talking about Blackwell and what they have coming, the average price I think is $515,000 to $530,000 per unit. To all of you who say, I never heard one person ever say they charge too much or that they should lower their price. So when you look at price and power, which also helps their net margin, profit margin, and market share, and if the top 7 or top 15 companies are buying from them at scale to help, they are the infrastructure of this AI movement. They're going to be here at least for the next 4 or 5 years. I know AMD is making a chip, and that's his cousin, so he may give her a little insight on some throwaway shit that he doesn't care about to help them. But Carabas and Intel and everyone else that, like, this is like when LeBron was coming into the league, and then Darius Miles said to whoever, hey, I'm glad for drafting to bring us some help. No, you're about to be out of here. It is a shout to you. I want to smoke if I see you in Cleveland or wherever. But when there is a changing of the guard and a company is this powerful, and we had, conversations endlessly about debt ratio and debt to GDP, and is America losing its luster? They're one of the few companies that are shining bright to make America seem exceptional. So why go against that trend? And if you study this 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day, it'll come in handy. And that's true of all. Like, even if we go to dinner, when Rashad gets to looking down like this in the proper pose, I say, oh, he working some media magic. He done figured out a new reel format, carousel. I'm always working on this. This is the thing about anyone who's great at their craft. They're always working on their craft. I know y'all tired of me piling up on Adam. Don't let them GDs beat up on you. Call me Adam.
Please.
I'll call some people in Chicago for you. But when you work on your craft every day, 7 days a week, at some point you're going to get lucky by having a system in place. So if I made you money, I appreciate you. Put yes in chat. But I don't think people saw this early enough And that's fine because I did. But if you missed out on the boat, why are you going to miss out again? You missed out on Bitcoin on 20,000, 28,000. Mike Novogratz stamped it. I told you about the companies that were going to fall. I told you Apple was going to have a slight decline. And you're like, who are you to say Apple isn't going to? I had an Apple II. Apple first phone. At AT&T, went to Indianapolis to go get it. First day. Like, trust me, this is my lived experience with these products and companies. Unlike most of these content creators, I'm not just talking about this and then getting flexy. So I love everyone.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes the work is done for you and people still want to make it complicated.
It's not complicated. All you got to do is put the food in your mouth and chew. I cooked it. I sauteed it.
So here's the crazy part. I think we had a dialogue. We were going back and forth. We had banter. I think you said 107. I said 112. If you got to have either,
you won.
You won, right? But then we had further dialogue, I think a couple of weeks after that, and we saw a slight pullback. And I said, and somebody ran up with me and said, yo, Troy, I remember y'all said that. I was like, yo, this number start with 9.
Yeah.
And we were like, yo, 97.
Yeah.
And then it got down to 97. And then still people didn't execute on that. Now it's up at 139, got to hit 140. The reports of Blackwell. Think about this. When we were talking about Blackwell a month ago, it was, the delay. They're not going to be able to fulfill these orders.
Yeah.
And now Blackwell is sold out for 2025.
Great business move.
It is sold out for the entire next year.
Can't get one.
What is Blackwell?
So Blackwell is their new GPU. So right now, it's working on the current GPU, but they gave the forward guidance, told you Blackwell is going to be the next GPU that's actually going to be more efficient and have higher functioning, right? That one is sold out.
Yeah.
Last 2 weeks ago, Cisco announced that they're buying in the bulk over $7 billion worth of product. We already talked about Microsoft. We talked about Meta. They're already allocated
3.5 of that. I just not to cut you off, but they get to keep 3.5 from Cisco.
7 billion, right? We already talked about all of these things, and now it's sold out. And on top of it, they're saying, all right, well, if there's, and that's why I want to talk about the tariffs. Yeah. Yes, if China decides, hey, you know what? If there's going to be tariffs on our business, maybe we create our own product. Well, they said, okay, well, if we can't sell Blackwell to you, we'll make a product directly that we can sell to you.
We'll make Whitewell.
We're going to make a product that we can sell directly to you. We don't want to lose your business. We'll make one directly to you since we know it's an arms race to have these chips. We'll create that. Me and my brother spoke this weekend, and I said, yes, the political parties make a lot. It's a lot of banter. But what's Nvidia doing? That's going to be more important to the people that are listening. Are you invested? Are you invested in AI? Right? Because, yes, you have an opportunity to vote in about 8 weeks, and yes, it is important. But today, what are you executing on? Are you executing on that? You could bring up AMD, and I know we said
it's not comparable.
Well, I know we said second place is not a place you want to be in business, but there are family ties there.
Hey, that's first cousin.
There's family ties there, and so yes, if my product costs $60,000, right? Well, I allow you to come into the space and say, all right, well, I know we're not that, but I can offer you something at this.
I'm sold up currently for 2025, but AMD has an amazing Blackwell chip that you can go.
An alternative option.
Listen to the advice. Because honestly, if y'all want to talk about that, I know some of y'all be on me about price. For some of these picks, I can charge 50 or 60 grand alone with no management fee for.
Right. And
go look at Ian Dunlap rolling out article. I was talking about this in 2017.
Yeah, this is yours. And we talked about using AI in tech, and we showed you how to use Claude. Shout out to Claude, has been rated the number one most proficient GPT. I gave the prompt out. Here's the prompt.
That was a crazy.
Here are all the analysts. Go look at the average analyst. You don't even have. It will tell you that it's not pulling. This is actually taking information. It's showing you.
And big data.
Morgan Stanley. Here's Morningstar. Here's JP. Every look at the price target. Here's the average. Do you combined it? If you look at what Nvidia is at, right? This was in August when we did this. The price target for the end of the year was 140. We're here.
We're already here.
We're here.
Some of y'all keep asking, regardless of both candidates, who's going to win? Nvidia. took the purple Lamborghini just to race in China. They gave you to play. We made a whole different sector for China to not conflict with the U.S. sales. I want to know what those numbers are.
Yeah.
What? So, yeah, Nvidia to the moon. Microsoft is stock of the decade. Still holding the Apple. You're good. VO, VTI.
And they said their market share inside the space is going to grow in 25.
Well, all right.
Hands down.
So Nvidia.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. TSM. Will TSM hold up through earnings?
I'm gonna be real. Please stop asking about earnings. Earnings don't matter. Earnings are for amateurs. Put that in chat. I don't know. Do you guys? You've had the fortune to talk to a few billionaires. A lot of them, especially all the black ones. Have any of them ever in their conversations told you, man, I really got a fucking fortune by playing earnings?
No, I won't say that they've said that, but they do pay attention to it.
You have to pay attention to it, but it's not the thing to play primarily.
No, that's not the primary play. In fact, it's very risky to do that.
Yes, even if you're trying to gain capital, because I know some of y'all like, well, y'all rich, so it don't. Man, I was doing this shit when I had no money. Shut up talking to me. Stop waiting for earnings, yo. That's not the move. If it's a quality company, earnings don't matter. The short-term reporting, what happens over a year, is what's important. IBM or Intel or one of them little shitty coin companies that you love, they may do well in earnings and then they fall back, and then what? No. Nike may do well in earnings next quarter. I don't know if over 4 months or 8 months if they'll do incredibly well. So it's a great question, but it get asked so much. It's not the Super Bowl of returns that it used to be. And it sucks to be long a company that reports great earnings and its shit falls through the floor. I'm not gonna lie, even when the Robo Taxi thing came out and Elon's stock, I said, how?
Right.
The thing actually worked.
We've seen it
over the Cybertruck when he threw that little ball through the glass. Like, he delivered.
This ain't gonna break. And we've seen this happen plenty of times. We saw it happen with Meta. We saw it happen with Tesla. We literally just saw this happen last quarter with Nvidia. They didn't hit a grand slam. They still hit a home run. They've been hitting grand slams for 4 quarters in a row. At some point, it's good, not good enough anymore. Or it's great, not even great enough. TSM, we've been saying this for 3 years. Literally. 3 years been saying this since I've been saying and shown like, hey, I'm in this cause 105, January 2025. It's at 190 right now.
Yeah. And to anybody in Red Panda, put it in chat. Have I ever mentioned on One Stock Club call earnings one time? It's the last thing I'll look at.
We talked about the importance. So this is like sometimes like, well, what is TSM? We've spoken about this a number of times about its role in the AI economy. From an infrastructure standpoint, yes, the geopolitical issues are still there. That's not going anywhere, not yet.
Nope.
But where it sits, it's a necessity inside the space, right? If Nvidia is going to have these chips, who is manufacturing for them still? And until they decide that, and he did hint at that. I will say that he did hint at some point, and the he I'm talking about is obviously Jensen, the CEO of Nvidia. He did hint that at some point we may not want to rely on another company.
Yeah,
that point is not today. In fact, that takes, and they have the capital to do it, but it takes time to build out that infrastructure.
And not for those of you who are watching tonight, but if you're watching the clips, you're not going to get rich off clips. Watch the entire episode. If you're about to pay me $4.40, pay me $4.40. But if I'm giving you the information for free, why are you asking these same fucking questions about AMD, Nvidia, TSM, IBM, FICO, bruh? Some point, have conversations in the car. At some point, y'all got to put in the work. Y'all want to make $15 million a year and do no research and work 2 days a week and sip my time? It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Intel fell apart. You're not going to make $9 million a year scamming. Some of y'all got it off 2 years ago. But no mas. You know what I mean?
7 days over. That we just had that conversation. That's a fact. They don't, and that's part of it. Like, if they understood what it took to get to this point, if they understood on a daily basis what it took, number one, I don't think you even sign up for it just because you're not built for it. You're just not, and that's okay.
Yeah, it takes work. Even for you, people having fun. I saw the little K-pop girl 2 rows in front of me. Take 600 photos to put 4 of them up with her team, though. All that shit where she didn't get to see none of Julius Randle fit when he walked across state. It's work. Y'all think we just be out chilling? No, this shit takes a lot of work. Carrabba's, I like this stock. It's not going to compete against Nvidia. Maybe a good third or fourth in the future. I do like the team. Not going to take Nvidia's spot. It's hard to take a market leader spot that they created. While AMD was focusing on video games and all that, they found a way to make enterprise. Here's a novel concept: make enterprises more money and more efficient so they can hire less people. You'll probably get rich doing that.
There's a good chance.
It's a very good chance.
Good chance.
Yep.
We all need you.
Yes.
So XRP, what's your thoughts on XRP's future?
It is very bright and promising future, but Larry Fink needs, or BlackRock or State Street needs to put their hands in it and crown it an authoritarian in their crypto space. There's a such thing called market makers. And without it, it's not going to move as fast as it should. I love XRP, but I said the same thing with Bitcoin. There's no decentralized anything. Not going to happen. If they have a central intelligence agency, why would something be decentralized in this country? Fuck all them white papers and the YouTube reports. And I'm telling you real shit that I know. There's never going to, nothing is decentralized. Not one thing. So shout out to TD Bank who got caught washing that cartel money. I only had to pay that little fine. Shout out to who. Let's go.
The fines are so they're almost comical. You take the fine
every time. I'd rather take the fine and upset Hefe. You crazy.
What about VNO?
Great question. I want to be fair because I don't want to feel like I'm only talking about stocks that I personally love. They've had a great run over the last year for sure. If you caught it at the bottom, maybe at $20, hold on to it. But if you hit all and you see back in 2006, the high was 92. I don't like any stock that their previous high was a year prior, let alone a decade prior. The previous high was in 2008. Now, if you're in a swing trade, you're in an option, short term, cool, I like it. But I would not invest in it long term unless I got it into it at 20 or $21. I will leave it alone. Bernardo Realty Trust, solid company. I know it's had some volume. I wouldn't hold it for long. It's like one of them little dates you go on like casually, like one time, and after the one time it's over with. That's
that brings up a great point. And
yeah,
like there are some people who might be watching this, like they never heard us talk about volume.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the volume. It says over 515,000. Talk about the importance of that, like seeing people inside of the trades and using that as an indicator to say, all right, there's movement here. This is either trending upward or trending downward.
Yeah, you have to look at the volume. I wouldn't look on an hourly chart. I would look at the daily to see how much volume is coming in. But the best companies in the world are going to have consistent volume day after day and month to month. Fly-by-night company, well, not fly-by-night, but like an equity that's got a lot of traction will have a bunch of volume pump in. Because if you look at that low, it's almost impossible for it to go lower. So they got it at a great price. Back to that asymmetric risk to reward. Like if I buy at 20, what's the probability of it going up to 60? Very high. From 60 to 120, hard climb. So you want to take shots where you know you can make the most money. But look at that volume on the daily chart to see if that volume is steady, and it should be within a 20% range. You shouldn't have a day where the volume's at 700,000 or 2 million shares for the day, and then the following day it goes back to 85,000. You don't want the disparity.
Yeah, and I would look at different companies, because if you look at the mega cap companies, you can't compare that, right? When you're talking about hundreds of millions of trades inside of a day, and as opposed to some of these mid-tier to mid-cap companies where you might see 11 million, 10 million, or even less. Where like I'm talking here, 500,000.
Yeah.
If it has an average, then it'll tell you a lot about what people are thinking of inside of that trade.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of times people will say, well, the prices or stocks that we talk about are too expensive. They weren't expensive when we first started talking about them.
No.
Even want to show, you sent me the clip. You know, when we started the show, Eli Lilly was at 150.
115.
Oh, see. So, I mean, it would behoove you to invest. I know a lot of y'all worried about candidates, but shit, if I was white and I ran for president, I should be a landslide to the information I gave out. Take advantage of it, please. Please.
Yeah. And shout out to everybody that I got some DM. I do check DMs like every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm watching Live Nation. That's a company we talked about during the pandemic when it was at
a long time ago.
42 hours, 27. It's almost near its all-time high. It's trading at 115 today. It's making some moves. Yes, I'm watching it. And everybody that was in the class last 2 months ago saw that I left. I left it out the portfolio.
Yeah.
I exited. But if you're still in that, great for you. Congrats.
Yeah. Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
What's your prediction on Microsoft's earnings?
Once again, don't care about earnings, but long-term projection to the moon. 49% of OpenAI. Satya is doing incredibly well. I said it was my stock of the decade in 2021. That has not changed. And if I can argue, Satya has outperformed Tim Cook by a nice margin, for sure. Everything that Apple should have done, Microsoft has done. And for the first time in my adult lifetime, Microsoft from a brand perspective than Apple is. Crazy how the tide turns. So the earnings, I think they'll do great, but I'm never looking at short-term horizon. I'm always looking like a year or 3 years out. They're going to do incredibly well. And they're going to weather every political storm. If we do have a recession in 27, they'll be great. As long as Satya there, they'll be A-okay.
Yeah, and then you can see just from a tech standpoint, like you said, the OpenAI investment, that speaks for itself. But when we talk about energy, how do we make it more efficient? How do we make it so that it's not something on the CapEx table that's costing us and costing our business?
Yeah.
If we're going to have AI, if we're going to have data centers, what's the most efficient way to do it? Obviously, is nuclear. So them investing in Constellation, it makes perfect sense because they're looking at the landscape going towards the future and like, hey, if somebody's going to be running these centers, it's going to be us and we're going to power them ourselves. So, that's that future guidance. I wonder now when we're talking about earnings, what that does to the overall bottom line number for the next couple of quarters. We'll see, but they're already thinking ahead for the next 5, 10, 20 years.
5 or 6 years. And imagine that you're worried about a 3-month horizon when you're going to miss 10 years worth of growth.
Right.
So I think what everybody should be looking at is like 3-year performance over earnings.
Yeah.
Sure. That'll tell you the tell.
That's one of those things.
A year or two.
Yeah. You take some of those bumps now because you can see the road ahead.
Yep.
What about hotel stocks like Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Wyndham?
I think there's some winners there, but I want to take the time to say when you're comparing sectors, what edge will hotels have? And I'm talking from a long-term perspective. Will they have over tech, healthcare? You can argue energy. Sector over sector, I don't think they will outperform or outclass them. A couple of them I do like, but I think it would be ill-advised to elicit someone to want to invest there over tech. So I do like some of the one, and I'll give you guys a challenge. You guys are great investors tonight in the show. Out of this group that Rashad mentioned, which one would be the one to invest in? But I think as a sector as a whole, you need to stay away from it. I want us to stop trying to find like garbage or like a diamond in the garbage pile, and I want you to go right to the diamond mine and pick up all the diamonds. Great. It's an amazing question, but I think it's the wrong sector to invest in across the board.
And
what about the ones that have casinos in them?
Maybe. And if Jay-Z happens to acquire one, I'm for that one forever. Oh, Vito, I'm behind you. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Times Square one. There's a Queens project going on.
Yeah.
Sands. Casinos bring a lot.
Yeah. Or if they have exposure to UAE.
There you go.
Decent investment. I will say that. But I think once you get past the company, you have to look and see, is that sector more valuable than the other ones that are there? Because everyone's just trying to recreate their Las Vegas Sands play from 2008. They got destroyed. Same with Boeing. For a long time, Boeing was a great investment. Now, not so much. I've been telling you guys for a few years, it's not the move. And if the Department of Defense cuts down on the budget for defense, which they never will, But if they do, Boeing will be greatly affected.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, and this is a stock that we don't talk about a lot, but we have mentioned before.
Yeah.
Rather than saying let's invest in individual hotels, how do you book the hotels? Go take a look at bookings.com.
Yeah, them and Expedia smoking boots.
Go check that out.
Yep, smoking boots for the mistake to not build your own tech. Same like the music industry did with Napster, but they got it back on the Spotify. So hotel industry, maybe on the next go round of the tech build, you can own 30% of it.
At some point, they'll probably split. And I'm talking about bookings. I think it's like over 4,000 a share right now.
Why would you? The interesting part is not a consumer favorite that people lean into. So you don't have the pressure from the consumers to make you bring the price down. If I'm chairman,
look at that. If you want a chart to look at in terms of growth,
absolutely.
Press all on BKNG, Booking Holdings, and yeah, bask in that.
Whoever put this plan together, he's another great white too. We got
I think we need a list now. I feel like a list is needed.
Elon, him, Bill Gates. Bill Gates left tech and went and got farmland and mosquitoes. I said, damn, you own a mosquito, the malaria too? Damn. That boy talented.
Got the cure for it.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah. And then we also have to note that we were talking about Tesla earlier, but there has been a report that some of those robots was actually being remotely controlled by humans.
Oh.
So Bloomberg broke that story. So
imagine, fellas, you get caught cheating and your girl turn on the robot to beat your ass for you cheating in the house. It's crazy.
What was he last name?
With the DJI remote? Boy, that's crazy. What?
So yeah. So
they hacked into the robot and controlled it?
No. What they're trying to say is that Tesla had people at Tesla's headquarters that was manually controlling the robots.
Oh, okay.
So we asked the question,
great secret?
Telling it what to say.
I don't know exactly the details, but it might have been that, or it might have been movement. So, now it's like, is it as advanced as Elon is making it out to be? Pretty much they're trying to say like he cheated, right? Like it's not as impressive as it looks because they had somebody behind the scenes, like a puppet master. They had somebody behind the scenes, actually a human being actually pulling triggers, answering questions, movement, stuff like that. So I don't know. This is alleged. This is what Bloomberg reported.
Yes.
Pretty reputable source. But Elon might have pulled a fast one.
Perhaps.
Interesting, given that he wants to be a puppet master in office.
Could you live with like affordable price? Let's say that this thing is down to 2,500. Would y'all have like a Optimus in your house?
The conspiracy theorist in me says no. The practical version of me would say yes.
What about you?
Yeah.
I mean, gotta see how the first wave. You never want to. You don't get the.
You don't get the first wave of the product.
Subject. You gotta.
And if you can never truly power it off, no. I hate that about iPhone. You can't truly shut off an iPhone, even when the battery's dead.
Yeah, gotta wait for version 3 at least.
Yeah.
But you would do it. At version 3, everything, this is like the Jetsons.
If he's not MAGA, what if you get a MAGA robot? Ooh, I'm in there bumping my Dr. Umar and they're coming like, smash my laptop.
He just stands like in the living room at night. Like, what does it do?
Hey,
walks around the crib.
Tough. It's tough. But if it's efficient, Roomba, iRobot, y'all better start something. So, but here's a great secret. Most of the AI powered things, with the exception of Claude and ChatGPT, are human powered somewhere in India and China. Intuit got caught up in that scandal a couple years ago. Be mindful. So, is it AI or human powered?
Be leery.
Yeah.
And be wary.
Yes. And shout out to Kevin O'Leary.
Shout out to Solange. Seat at the table, classic.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
So the Department of Justice is trying to break up Google. What are your thoughts on the stock for next year?
They struggle for a couple other reasons, but I'm going to be honest, they're not going to break that company up. Like, okay, so if you make them take Google or YouTube and become public, is that a pro for the economy or a pro for Google? I wish you would take my most public or most valued asset and make that publicly traded as well. They're not going to break that company up. And let's be real, once you get to like this power and this level, I've always said that your goal is to have a monopoly. Google doesn't have a true monopoly. And they don't really have any great competitors. For everyone, and of course you have shout to all the amazing companies out there, but you don't have a video streaming company that is reliable as YouTube. Vimeo, great. Patreon, okay. But they have no, it's not because they made the landscape where it wasn't competitive. The offerings are not competitive. DuckDuckGo, I love for the privacy, but it doesn't give the same results as Google search engine. So I haven't seen any email providers at scale provide an amazing email service. Like a lot of these companies have not innovated, but to break it up, I think would be a mistake and would make Google even more powerful. So
yeah, I don't like it. I saw the report. I didn't like it then. I don't like the the talks of it. Yeah, it made me think of all of its use cases, obviously from a search engine standpoint, from a media streaming standpoint, but from a media standpoint for a lot of us, right? We're talking about this is the way we consume, not just like this is what everything. This is TV for us for a generation. So yeah, hopefully not. This is in the portfolio, well documented. So
but if so, YouTube will be one of the best equities
we all know
to invest in ever.
Yeah.
And I would love to see what that profit margin is because they have the real model. I don't know if some people saw, but now you can put chapters and titles and put your own series on YouTube. CBS, Paramount Plus, y'all better get it in order. Because if they find a way for creatives to pay for their own content, and now we just give you the AdSense. I know y'all want to talk about CPM. I keep telling you, wrong business model. You know who it's right for? Google. I'm gonna pay you little pennies per thousand for your content that's not sticky and won't last past 2 days. Here's a notable idea: make content that'll last longer than a day. Not a media expert, but I've been around some. The content should last longer than a day.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
That's a fact.
Perhaps.
Okay. So if you could only pick one stock between Amazon and Mercado Libre, which one would it be?
Shout to Jeff Bezos, shout to Lauren, Jassy, the entire team at HQ at Amazon. I love you guys dearly. I like Mercado Libre a little bit better. Of course, Amazon stranglehold in the United States, amazing company. But the net profit margin for Mercado ended in June of 2024 was 8%. This is really a profit margin battle. Now, of course, is Amazon more like here? But if I look internationally, I think Mercado Libre has an edge. On my SWOT analysis, like the biggest weakness they have is the profit margin is too low for me. It's been a stock club pick forever. It's been in my portfolio forever. But if I have to pick one or the other, and I think I talked about it in 2020 and 2021, so you the 3x since then, more than likely. I think Mercado Libre is a better stock to invest in at the time. Amazon may be a better company, but in terms of global equity, I think Mercado Libre is stronger. And if Jack Ma didn't go on his little vacation, Baba probably would have that lead overall as well.
Yeah, their expansion, the global expansion is there for them.
Insane.
You're talking about markets, and you are right in the sense that it has outperformed Amazon this year. They've gone and yet we always talk about, what the problem with following someone is that you'll never be able to duplicate what the original person's doing, right? Because they're always creating. Well, they've done that, and they've actually created some of their own things, right? So when they're doing banking, that's something that Amazon really hasn't done.
Yep.
When they've created a stable coin, that's something that Amazon really they haven't done that. So they have followed the leader in the space in terms of e-commerce, but they have created their own verticals that they haven't seen which is impressive. So
Yeah.
I think this is one of those stocks. Maybe a couple of years ago we spoke about. Yes, it has outperformed, but what it hasn't done is it hasn't split either.
True.
Right. So when you see the shares going over $2,000, at some point maybe that scales down into maybe they want more people involved in the stock. It's performed incredibly. E-commerce space. I mean, we just went to a store, Ian. Right. I try to drive to the store.
Yeah.
Every store is closed. It's only online. I don't even know. Like a month ago, it was here. So they have that in their favor. They're attacking e-commerce. They're catering to their audience, right? Like Latin America or Latin X or wherever.
That's fire, yo.
It's on fire. It's on fire for them. So yeah, I will give them 2024. They have performed better long term. I still like Amazon because banking is tough. They're going into healthcare. Amazon still has that space, and there's so many different verticals that they have. I still like Amazon long term as a better stock, but 2024, Carlito has outperformed it.
Yeah, net income went up 102%, diluted EPS up 103%, net margin is up 43%, which is a lot for that retail space. Cost of revenue, 54% improvement. So you can't argue. And if you get to travel and go on one of the Mercado Libres, it must be looking like a club sometimes to be packed. So international arbitrage. Yeah, you got to go look.
So what's preventing stocks like GMAB to go up, even though their fundamentals are strong?
They're not the best in class. One thing I've learned in business, sports, eventually it may take longer, but if you are best in field, you would get paid as the best in field. I like the company. I've mentioned it before in Stock Club, but if you look at their top 4 competitors, you can't give me a reason why they may potentially be better. So like if a stock is always priced in a $20 to $50 range, there's a reason that institutions or pension funds may believe that they aren't worth the value long term to hold. So the fundamentals can be good, but are they great? So you got Regeneron, Gilead, GSK, Biogen, I won't even mention Lilly, Biopharm, Insight. And you got a bunch of people in that bio space that are some dogs. They're good. The question is like, there is no good or great, there's best in everyone else. That's all investing is. If you go back to the days when IBM was leading in the 70s, they were the best. No one remembers the third competitor of IBM. No one remembers Standard Oil's competition from when they got broken up. Who was the fourth best? You are either investing in the greatest company or the rest. They just haven't found a way. It doesn't mean they can't in the future, but they haven't found a way to make their company so valuable that they have to be declared number one. And I think if you guys stop avoiding that mistake and look at it, are they best in class? Investing becomes a hell of a lot easier for you. Great company though, revenue strong, but they're definitely not the best in that category. So, but what do I know? It's a guy in a blue sweater who's in his lover boy era. What do I know? I'm gonna get mad and stop talking one day. We're gonna cut these episodes down 30 minutes. What'd you say, Troy? Lightning round? All lightning round. Yes,
no, with lightning round.
Just wrap it up. No. Me and Rashad gonna find a way to talk toxic to y'all on Blackout and you scale that. Okay. Got a trick for you. Okay. So we've educated you to death. Are they better than Amgen, Vertex, Bristol Myers Squibb? No. Gilead? No. GSK? No. No. You think Drake had a lot of competition this summer? That's a hell of a lineup. Biogen together. No. Man, if you don't have the regulators and the politicians on your side, Pelosi ain't bought no Genmab calls. Not one time. Shout out to Nancy Pelosi making $24 million a year. Y'all can't ask her a single question.
Speaking about biotech, the industry that we've been talking about a lot, ADMA is a stock that is up over 500%. Been on the tear. It was $3 a year ago. Now it's at $16.37.
Yeah.
Has that peaked?
Yeah, you missed out. Just like if you missed out on Nvidia at 92. Sometimes you just miss. You got to wait for it to pull back. I don't know if it's peaked out, but now is not the time to buy in. Got to wait 5 or below 5 to be able to invest in it. Sometimes you just miss out.
Yeah, big drop.
Great opportunities don't come back. Yeah. But shout out to you for asking the question. Are there others in the space? I mean, historically, but you had all of 21, part of 22 to get in at $3. It gave you a long enough time. So you had 2 years to get in it.
Yeah.
For 2 years.
That there's a lesson to be learned inside of there, right? So like when you see a chart go like this and you're like, wait, what happened in last October or in 2022? What happened for it to spike this way?
Yeah.
That's when you go research to see what was there legislation that passed? Was there something new in innovation that's happening inside the space? What triggered it? Because then that could take you down a rabbit hole of like, hey, I know I didn't see this one, but if this space is starting to move in this direction, if it's starting to trend in that direction, there might be some companies, big boy companies that are looking at this to say that's an acquisition opportunity.
Yeah.
But there's two ways to look at that. Yeah, I missed opportunity, but wait, there's more inside this space. We can start to see it. Look at some of its competitors. Are the competitors moving in the same way? If they're not, then there's something that this company has that the others are looking at and saying, all right, they've got the first form of it. Who's going to replicate it? Who's going to make it better? Who's going to make it more efficient to do it? So there's always opportunities inside of runs like this when you miss them. Or
invest in an ETF, easy fix, or just realize you missed out.
Yeah.
They're going to join the S&P 600, but the auditor also resigned.
Get them out of here.
Not a good sign.
Give me the books first.
Tough. Bobby Flay over there. So allegedly, be careful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. There's no easy gains, man. All the easy gains are gone. The scam era, every industry's over with. Tightening up the ship.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yep.
That's a fact. Facts. Okay. So yes, before we bring our guest on, just to recap, you want to TSM long-term hold, Microsoft long-term hold, Nvidia long-term hold,
Eli Lilly
long-term hold,
Visa, FICO,
Google. We have to wait and see.
I still like Google long-term.
Yeah, we long-term on that.
Yeah,
we long-term.
Microsoft for sure. With OpenAI, when OpenAI becomes public, hold it long. When SpaceX becomes public, hold it long-term. Elon had them catch that rocket out there like a transformer and put it back in place. And listen, I mean, VOO, BlackRock, everyone how can I invest in BlackRock? Be okay. They have $11 trillion under management. For those of you who don't know, that's a lot of fucking money.
Trillion.
11 trillion on a casual. Okay. It's not that hard. Stop making investing hard. We've forget democratized. We made it simple enough for a second grader to get it. VOO, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Mercado Libre, Visa, FICO, Uber, and the media list, Meta and Google, Eli Lilly. China's on an uptick because they're doing their own version of quantitative easing. What else you need?
There you have it. All right. Yeah. So let's bring our guest up. How's it going?
Man, it's going good.
Looking sharp, brother.
Appreciate that. Trying to figure out how Elon and Dick Cheney come together, but that's all right.
I'll put it
together. It's an interesting combination. Byron Donalds, Republican congressman from Florida, somebody that has been on a lot of different news publications and is a very vocal advocate these days when it comes to the Republican Party, especially for the Black community. There aren't too many Black people that have reached notoriety from the Republican ranks. Tim Scott, yourself. So you've become one of few that have become a go-to when it comes to Black community, Black issues, and just questions in general when it comes to Black voters. So, we're going to have a good conversation about finances, amongst other things. It's a heated political season. First and foremost, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Man, it's my pleasure to be here. Really glad for the success you guys are having, not just with this podcast, but with all the things that you guys do. So happy to be here.
All right, so let's start it off here. We're obviously, a few weeks away, right, from a historic election. And the Republican Party has always been known as the party of economic engine growth, I guess. That's like when people think about Republicans, that's what they think about most of the time. So what is your message to voters when it comes to people that are thinking about the economy, right? The Republican agenda. I don't think we've heard it a lot. Even in the debate, we didn't really get details on too much about anything. So in this economy, when millions of people are struggling, what is the Republicans' message to people that are interested in, having a better economic environment?
Well, look, it's a good question. It's probably the most important one in this election. I think when you talk about what our position is, there's a couple things that just have to be done. Current tax policy expires next year. Current tax policy actually cut marginal rates for middle class families, for high earners. It did a cutting of taxes for small businesses in the United States. It's scheduled 199A. Those tax cuts all expire next year. When it was originally passed under the first Trump administration, it was done through something called budget reconciliation, which only allows it to be in effect for 10 years. So that policy is all going to start unwinding next year. I think the first piece is continuing current tax policy. I think the reason why that's important for the economy overall is that when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act went into place, or TCJA, however you want to call it, what happened is that you actually had an ability for businesses to do a couple of big things. The first one was 100% expensing of capital expenditures. It used to be that you have to do that on a depreciation schedule over several years, depending on the type of equipment you were going to buy. So now businesses could do a 100% write-off on that equipment purchase or that capital expenditure in the year you expense it. That's big in terms of business cash flow, because you then have an opportunity to grow your enterprise. That doesn't matter if you're a corporate, if you're a large small business, which if you actually look at the definition of a small business from the standpoint of a federal government, that's typically you have employees of somewhere between 100 to 500. That's all considered small business under the tax code currently. Or like what I like to call micro businesses. These are your mom and pops, your startups. You have somebody who's doing a venture, whether it's in tech or digital assets, or they want to be in the retail aspects of our economy, opening up a store or whatever. Those are micro businesses, but all those businesses could actually take advantage of that. The other piece of the overall economic plan is cutting regulations. When Donald Trump was president the first time, his policy was for every one new regulation that was going to be enacted, the federal agencies had to cut 2 existing regulations. What that meant was that from a monetary basis, there was about $350 to $400 billion worth of regulation that was cut in order that really took the shackles off of small businesses, allowed them to flow, to figure out how they were going to expand their business, raise capital, etc. Those are the 2 main pieces. I think in today's environment, the third big thing is energy policy. It doesn't matter what type of product you buy, it either comes on a ship or it comes on a truck. So energy policy writ large is incredibly important. We have to become energy dominant on the global stage. It's not good enough just to be energy independent, and we're kind of teetering with that now. We have to be energy dominant. Because when you're energy dominant, what happens is you push down the barrel of crude oil that's traded every single day. You drive down that spot price. You drive down the spot price of natural gas. So that does a couple of things. Number one, obviously, it lowers electricity bills, which hits everybody in the United States, whether you're rich or poor. Number two, when you decrease the cost of energy, it decreases the cost of transportation, which directly helps small businesses and large businesses too, because the cost of moving product is now decreased. You couple that with lower regulation, which means it actually makes it harder for small enterprises and small businesses to compete against larger ones or against corporations or even multinational corporations. And number three, you have continued policy in tax policy. Continued tax policy, what it does is it allows people to be able to plan. I know that it's been debated about, oh, well, those tax cuts added to the deficit. Well, actually, that's not true. When they were first passed into law, the Congressional Budget Office, they actually put out their report was that it was going to cost us about $2 trillion in tax revenue. That's how they scored it. The reality of Tax Cut and Jobs Act is that we've actually raised about $3 trillion overall, in addition to what CBO said. Actually, let me say that correctly. We raised more than $1 trillion more than CBO anticipated. So CBO thought we were going to lose $2 trillion. We actually did not lose the $2 trillion. We also raised another $1 trillion on top. So the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, actually paid for themselves. Right now in Washington, we raise, in terms of tax revenue, more money than we ever have in the history of the federal government at any point in time in American history, adjusted for inflation. And we also raise a larger percentage of the economy, now roughly 20%, than at any other time in the history of the federal government. The federal government historically raises about 17 to 18% of GDP into the Treasury. I think the last thing I'll say on this, and we'll go back to the questions, but last thing I'll say on it is often said that, the Democrats want to get rid of this tax policy, or this is bad tax policy, or it's tax cuts for the rich, or et cetera. But when Joe Biden came into office and Nancy Pelosi was running the House and Chuck Schumer was running the Senate, they could have got rid of Trump's tax policy. They did not. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, one of the things you talk about in terms of taxes, potentially the party is, thinking about replacing personal income tax and increasing tariffs. I know there's been talk about increasing tariffs in China. Want to know your thoughts on how beneficial that is from a personal standpoint for the average day American, to a business standpoint, where we see if we raise tariffs, the cost of business goes up. That might go into the conversation of being energy dominant, but also infrastructure and technology dominant. What's your thoughts around the tariff situation?
A couple things. One, I've never really heard President Trump say that he's trying to replace the income tax with tariffs. I've not heard him say that. I've heard the criticism or the critique, or that he's trying to layer tariff policy on top of the income tax or create some sales tax, but I've never heard him say that. So I think it's important for people to understand that tariff policy, the purpose is, and I'll explain it in more detail. The purpose of tariff policy that Donald Trump has brought is because we have a lot of trade deals that the federal government has not actually enforced. So China is the most glaring violator of our trade deals in the past, but there are other countries that violate them as well. And the federal government never actually upheld the trade agreement for the betterment of the American consumer and the American worker. And part of the reason for this is that for a long time, or really the last 100 years easily, America has had the dominant economy on the world stage. So these other countries who we had deals with, they cheated on the margins, but our economy was so dominant, it didn't really matter. It's like paying pickup against your 9-year-old. Yeah, they're traveling. Yeah, they're fouling you, but it doesn't really matter because you're so big. It doesn't really matter. What's happened over the last decade to 2 decades is that China is no longer a 9-year-old. China is now 16. So you now have to enforce the rules. Well, China had grown accustomed to not actually abiding by the rules of trade policy. So how do you get them to fall into compliance? And this is where Donald Trump said you have to start slapping tariffs, and not just on China, I'm using them as an example, but other countries that do not play fair with respect to trade agreements. Another important point about the tariff policy, is that Joe Biden's actually kept a lot of Donald Trump's tariff policy in place. He's not gotten rid of them. There's a reason for that as well, because if you want to have an opportunity for American companies and American consumers to actually be able to be in free trade around the globe and not be taken advantage of, you need tariff policy. Tariff policy, in my view, is not going to impact infrastructure spending. It doesn't impact innovation here in the United States. What it does do, it puts us on a level playing field from a trade perspective around the globe. I think if you're going to talk about infrastructure policy, there are definite ways to do that. The current administration, what they're doing is they are spending tons of money towards infrastructure. But if you look in the details of these infrastructure bills, the only way you can actually you can only take advantage of the money to do the project is that you have to use union labor in order to do it. The vast majority of these projects under the current administration requires a union shop in order to do that job. And I'm not trying to diminish union shops, but we have to acknowledge that the vast majority of construction companies are not union shops in the United States. So if that's going to be your infrastructure policy, you have a lot of companies that can't take advantage of that. If those companies can't take advantage of that, that also hurts the worker, who is the guy working construction, black guy, white guy, Hispanic guy. They're working construction. Their companies that they work for can't take advantage of those dollars being pushed broad-based into infrastructure. So that's the issue with that. You have to actually just have it be an open source dynamic where if you have a contractor that has the ability to deliver the project on time within budget, then that needs to be the first I guess, marker, if you will, the first criteria for giving out that job, not the first marker, the first criteria being that you're a union shop.
A quick question for you. If the Republican Party wins in November, what is the plan to control inflation and housing costs, which have ramped up incredibly over the next 4 years?
Yeah, so like this is going to be really, really tough because now we're in this point where you have to be careful of what's called of deflation, because inflation is tough. It's a silent tax, especially on working people, especially on seniors who are on fixed income. But deflation actually becomes more of a problem. So I think where we need to move now is price stability. That's actually done a couple of ways. The first is you have to control federal spending. On Capitol Hill, we've been wanting to actually, I would say we, meaning Republicans, we've been wanting to go back to what we call pre-COVID spending levels, meaning that before COVID-19, the federal government now spends roughly 30% more in the federal agencies. That's before you even get to the entitlement programs, 30% more today than it spent before COVID-19. Some of the fights around government spending back during the last debt ceiling deal was about actually bringing the federal agencies back to pre-COVID spending levels. My Democrat colleagues don't want to do that. Right now, we're running a budget deficit of $1.8 trillion, and we're not in a war. Like, we're not actively in a war. Now, we're supporting two conflicts, but we're not actively at war right now. And so when you massively spend like this, when you're not in a war or you're not in a pandemic, what's going to happen is you're going to keep devaluing the dollar, which also decreases purchasing power, which leads to inflation when people go to stores. So job one is you got to cut spending. It has to be constrained, so you're not inflating. You're basically not devaluing the dollar, which decreases purchasing power for consumers.
Cut
Number
spending.
two,
Where would you cut spending at? Where would you cut spending?
Oh, this is a great question. A couple of places. Number one, in DOD, there has to be some serious adjustments. And now I'm not speaking for the campaign. This is me talking. I'm talking for myself.
Okay.
DOD, there's got to be some adjustments, no doubt about it. We have a procurement problem.
To cut there?
Is it possible? Yeah, but it takes presidential leadership. And it's not something that the House can do by itself or the Senate can do by itself. You got to have presidential leadership to do it. And speaking specifically about defense, we're in a very precarious position. We have a lot of legacy ships and material that we do have to update at the same time, trying to be prepared for whatever conflicts are going on around the globe. And the third piece of that is that we have a larger workforce at DOD. So we're going to have to figure out very constructively, but can you get some procurement reforms at DOD to be able to cut some spending? Yes, you can. It's also in the agencies themselves. Every agency across the board, like I said, is up 20 to 30%. We also know that most federal employees are not actually in the office. They mostly work remote today. So that's an issue that we got to figure out. We have a lot of unused buildings in the federal government right now, in part because of COVID, but also before COVID, you had the work from home programs that were starting to move through the federal agencies before COVID-19. You have to address what are you going to do about spending in various agencies at the levels. How many departments within the agency are you going to have? What are the missions of the federal agencies? So you can do all that stuff. When my colleagues, when we worked on this on Capitol Hill over the last 2 years, we believe, yes, you could trim about $100 billion out of the agencies. Yes, you can do that. And that's even before you start getting to what are we going to do with Ukraine? What are we going to do about the Green New Deal tax credits, which Wall Street or Goldman, I think, valued at $1.4 trillion over the next decade. Well, let's examine that. You're going to spend $1.4 trillion on Green New Deal technology. However, no matter how you feel about climate change, that's what you're going to spend. You have to acknowledge that most of that money is actually going to go either to companies domestically that source their material from China or overseas, because we don't mine the critical minerals in the United States to build a lot of this tech. So that's where the money is going to flow. So you're sending a $1.4 trillion, maybe more, over to our adversary in China. To what end? Because we know solar panels and wind turbines cannot power the electric grid. We know this. It's not sustainable energy. It's not consistent energy. It's not baseload power that we need in the United States. So yeah, there's plenty of ways to cut.
Let me ask you this: as far as your party has been anti-forgiveness of student loans, right? That's something that the president has tried to push through. Supreme Court, which leans heavy conservative, they went against that. Local judges that are conservative went against it. Why are you guys so anti forgiving student loans when millions of people are struggling with student loan debt?
So look, I look at this from a personal matter. I had student loan debt. I had a bunch of it, actually. And so I went through that process of trying to figure out, how to pay it down, pay it off. I was fortunate enough to pay it off. Me personally, I was able to sell my house at a particular point in time where I had additional funds. And so my wife and I made a decision to pay off our loans. But the reality is 2/3 of the American people actually don't go to college. So we have multiple issues when it comes to student loan debt. Number one, 2/3 of the people don't go to college. So you're asking 2/3 of the nation to pay for 1/3 of the nation. And it's not even a third of the nation. It's more like probably maybe 15 to 20% of the nation.
Well, to push back on that, because this is
Sure.
pushback that we get on social media, right? They're saying, okay, well, we can pay for hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, Israel, a bunch of foreign entities, right? They don't make up any part of the population. So why are we funding wars overseas when we could help, even if it's 15% of the population? They're still American citizens, right? So our tax dollars are getting spent on things that we're not involved in, right? We're not involved in these things, but so it's like for that, the person that's like, well, why am I paying for somebody else's student loans? Well, why are you paying for somebody else's war?
Well, look, first of all, you get no argument from me on that point. There's a reason why I voted for the first Ukraine supplemental. I haven't voted for any other since then. So I think there's a legitimate point. I understand that angst. We can expand that not just to foreign wars. We can expand that to illegal immigration going on in the country right now. So I do agree with that point. I think when you talk about student loans, though, there is a situation where internally amongst Americans, you're going to have Americans saying, why am I paying off a $50,000 student loan debt from an Ivy League or from a private university? Or if you went to public university like I did, why am I paying off somebody's $22,000, $25,000, $30,000 student loan debt? You're going to have that internal conversation as well with Americans. The other point is that what we've done as a country, we have to get out of this mindset like college education is the only way to be successful. I'm not diminishing college education. I'm college educated, but there are many ways for young people to be successful in the United States. And what you actually find, and the reason why I said really like 15 to 20% is because of the third of the country that went to college, easily half of them can pay their loans, have been paying their loans, or doing that every single day. It's the people who unfortunately went and got a college degree that they cannot monetize in the economy. because they were sold the bill of goods about go to college and you'll be a success. Then they got the piece of paper that didn't have economic value, but they have a debt burden associated with it. So I think we have to really look at what are we going to fund in terms of college education? Which degrees have economic value? Which degrees have less economic value? That's really important. The third thing I will say, the Biden administration, they just decided to just do it on their own. But even Nancy Pelosi said they couldn't do it. They didn't bring a bill to Congress because they knew Congress wouldn't approve it. And I would argue it's not just Republicans. You have some Democrats that wouldn't approve it because they are looking at the same issue. If you go through the process of essentially legally forgiving student loan debt, what you're also going to do is supercharge future college tuition into the future, because the colleges are going to say, oh, well, shoot, we can just charge people whatever. It doesn't matter what we produce. And then the government's going to come in the back door and just pay for it anyway. Well, that's the telltale way to increase the cost of college education going forward. I think, obviously, I believe college education has great value. I do. But broad-based student loan forgiveness is not the recipe for success. I think the recipe for success is broad-based economic growth that allows people to use their college skills to earn for themselves and give them the ability to pay those debts down.
As a quick follow-up.
Well, Ian, I wanted to stay there because again, we are all college graduates, and I agree with what you said. Everybody is not going to be fit or needs to go to college because there are different careers that can prove to be successful in life. But that leads to people creating more small businesses, having more entrepreneurs. I wonder what the party's plan is to create incentives, create policies, to create legislation to help incentivize entrepreneurs, small businesses, specifically those who are Black and brown. As we see the numbers when it comes to lending, when it comes to having scalable businesses, it becomes extremely difficult. So I wonder what the party's idea is around that.
Two major things. One is deregulation. And I know that historically in politics, deregulation gets like a bad connotation because people view it as, oh, you're taking the rules away from the big guys. But I want to just tell everybody, the big guys don't care what rules you create. They have enough money and enough lawyers and enough employees to work their way around the rules. And also, if we're going to really look at how a lot of economic regulation is crafted, the big guys are in the room when it's getting written. So they know where the loopholes and where the traps are. It's your small business owner that's not in the room. They don't really know how this stuff is being crafted or drafted. So part of it is deregulation. I'll give you an example. In the digital asset space. Me personally, as a member of Congress, I sit on financial services. I believe we should have a regulatory sandbox for the digital assets industry. What I mean by that is the industry itself should stand up a regulatory body. That regulatory body creates its own rules and its own frameworks. The federal government can comment on those rules, the various agencies, whether it's FCC, Treasury, CFTC, OCC, they can comment on the rules of the digital assets industry, but the bureaucracy is not the one actually crafting the rules and the regulations. The reason why I believe that's important is because digital assets is a fledgling industry right now. It's in its infancy. We really don't know where it's going to go. It needs to be nimble in terms of how they're going to organize themselves as an industry so that young entrepreneurs can get into that space. I believe right now, not even believe, I know in digital assets, you have a lot of young Black entrepreneurs in digital assets because it's a tech industry. A lot of the overhead to getting involved is actually very, very low. There's an ability to build various tech products, whether they're direct cryptocurrency tech or supportive tech around various coins, currencies, etc. But if you have a top-down authoritative regulatory framework from Washington, it makes it harder for those people, Black people or anybody else, to be able to engage in that industry and be successful. So I think that's part of it. The other part, and that's why I keep going back to energy, because energy is infectious in everything that we do. Energy can raise the cost of production if you want to have a company in a digital space or not. And I think the third piece is, and this is where the campaign's tax policy is really important, because if you have a situation where your small business can make 100% expensing in the current year. That allows you to be able to really let those dollars flow, go directly into the enterprise, and you can recoup those dollars or decrease your tax burden associated with the dollars you expended. Last thing I will say is about capital issues. We have a major issue with access to capital in the United States, and that's because of poor banking regulatory policy. Current banking regulatory policy has made the big banks much bigger than they were at the financial collapse back in 2007, 2008. So your community banks really aren't in circulation of where they were, now 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. That entire framework of community banking is a lot smaller. There were some Black-owned community banks that could not survive because of the new regulatory pressure from Dodd-Frank regulation that was written and passed when Barack Obama was president of the United States. So all these things interlock and go together. That's really the Republicans' view of how you encourage small business formation, give them the legs and the ability to grow and to thrive and then be successful.
Going back to the student loan crisis, I think it's one of the biggest bubbles that we're facing. At some point, shouldn't the colleges and universities be liable for this massive debt trap that they put out on consumers? Because if any other industry had a 50 to 60% defective rate, there would be a lot of regulatory pressure that they would face. At what point do you think the colleges and universities will have to be liable?
I think it's coming, to be honest with you. I know we have members on the Hill who want to look at college endowments and say, look, these colleges have massive endowments, but they're still charging out the wazoo for kids to go. I think in terms of how you hold them accountable is tough, because when I was 17, before I went to college, when I was 17, I signed up. I signed the FAFSA forms. I did all that stuff. My mom took out a loan my first year in college because I was out of state tuition going into Florida. So we signed up. And so now contractually, if you go back and say, well, no, colleges, it's your fault, the college is going to do what anybody else would do. They're going to hold their contracts up and be like, we didn't force anybody to sign up. We told you we were going to charge you. And that's going to be an entire mess of a situation. Me personally, I feel really awful for what's happened because, I think a lot of kids just didn't know. I know I didn't know when I went to college. I just went and I majored in a degree that I knew I would be able to make money with. But a lot of people didn't know that. They were just told, do this and it's going to work out, and it hasn't worked out. So that's why I believe the way you deal with this going forward is, first is we have to be very careful about how we subsidize student loans going forward. And that doesn't mean you get away from student loans. It's important for a lot of kids from poor backgrounds to be able to go and excel in college. But we got to be very careful about how we do that. We have to make sure kids are focused into degrees that have economic value, like I said earlier. And then the third piece really starts in high school. Are our high schools now geared to be factories towards economic success, whether that's career and college or college, or are they going to continue just to be factories for higher education? Because if high schools are going to continue to be factories for higher education, there's still going to be young kids who are going to turn into 30-year-olds who are going to feel left behind and in a lurch because the system of education is not propelling them to be successful in life.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. But before we leave, I definitely want to give you the opportunity this is a hot topic. President Barack Obama recently made news when he spoke to Black men about why they should be supporting Kamala Harris and his disappointment in not the enthusiasm that he had during his presidency. And her campaign has struggled with really, getting Black men on board. I mean, the majority of Black men are still going to vote for her, right? But it's something that they've been working on. They just did the All the Smoke podcast. We've interviewed her. We've met with her. I see she's doing a lot of outreach to Black men, to her credit, which I think is intelligent. But what hasn't been asked is, why should Black men support Republicans, right? Like, if Black men are not going to support her, that's everybody's choice. They can make an intelligent decision. Why should they support the Republican Party? For the most part, the Republican Party has never done any outreach to Black community, to Black men, for the most part. right? They've Democrats have taken the vote for granted. Republicans have ignored the vote. So why should black men speak to black men and the Republican Party?
Look, a couple things. First, you're right about the Republican Party. And this is my criticism. They really haven't tried to reach out to black voters, haven't tried to go and see if it's even possible to gain black voters. I think the black voters that vote Republican, they made their own internal decision to look at policy, look at politics writ large, and decide that they have certain beliefs that don't align with the Democrat Party, and they've decided to make that change for themselves. I would say in terms of where we are today, it's a couple things. First, the economy. We've already seen through the past two administrations when people were making more money, but also when their money was going further. And if you compare the current administration to the Trump administration, under the Trump administration, you made more money, but wages adjusted for inflation were actually up. So not only were you making more money, your money went further. Number two, under Donald Trump's policies, the wage gap was actually shrinking. In 2019, the wage gap between rich and poor was shrinking. That's very important for economic mobility, especially upward mobility. Number three, our immigration system is a mess. It's a serious problem, and border security is a serious problem. We talked about a lot of different issues, but something that is going to have a downward effect on so many communities. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but so many communities across the country is when you have a massive amount of illegal immigrants in a city, in a town, in a county, and the illegal immigrants are getting hotel stays, food, cash cards, access to hospitals and emergency rooms. And yes, you have a lot of illegal immigrant children in the country who are in classrooms. Those kids are taking resources from our kids as Americans. Those hospitals are being overrun so Americans can't get care. And then there's the economic burden on cities and on states, which every state in the country is feeling. Number four, you take a look at our foreign policy. When Donald Trump was president, not only were there no new wars, we were getting out of wars. The world was much safer. Look at what's happening now. You could make the argument that we are on the verge of World War III. The Iranians are in active conflict with Israel. The Russians are in active conflict with Ukraine. And America has taken a position to support Ukraine and Israel. Could we get dragged into that? Yes, we could. If you just look at history, especially World War I, World War II, and other conflicts historically, that's how you get dragged into this stuff. Donald Trump has a record of actually not getting into conflicts, trying to get our nation out of that. Number five is cultural. And this is where I'm going to leave. Look, the modern Democrat Party, they do believe in this gender identity fluidity stuff. And look, if you're an adult and you decide you want to make a change with respect to your biology, that's fine for you as an adult. But to expose kids to that, I just can't get with that. I can't stand with that. And I do believe there's a lot of black people in America who do not agree with that. And I think you got to let kids be kids, let them go through puberty. We all went through fits and starts during that time. Let these kids mature. And if they choose to make a decision with their bodies at that point in the future, then they go and make that decision. But to short circuit the life cycle of puberty is just flatly wrong. I'll never agree with it. And that's not being anti people who change genders, but we have to respect puberty and adolescence and let kids grow up first and have them make those life altering major decisions on their own. I know the Democrat Party does not support the position I just espoused, but I do believe that there's a lot of black voters in our country who do agree with the position I espoused. So those are some of the reasons why I think they should be voting Republican this election cycle.
Well, what about Republicans in your my fault? What about Republicans in your state that want to take slavery out of the history taught to public school students in Florida?
This is a great question. I'm glad you brought this one up. So what happened was when they were going through, I think it was the AP course, actually. It was the AP African American Studies course that was coming into Florida. And so what the governor objected to, there was actually 4 modules in this course. The first 3 modules were the history aspects of African American Studies AP. The governor and the legislature was fine with that. The 4th module was when you got into some of the studies aspects. And I don't have them all committed to memory right now, but that actually did not deal with historical aspects of black people in the United States. that dealt with college level theoretical studies associated of the impacts of the history. And that's in a couple of those modules. That's what the governor and the legislature objected to. So they sent that back to College Board with their objections. College Board actually came back with a revised course that the last I heard, the governor and the legislature approved of, and then you move forward.
I listened to everything you said about why you think that black men should vote Republican, but I'm thinking of the timeline here, because it feels like every time we talk about Republican or Democrat, it starts Democrat at Obama and then it starts with Trump. But during the early 2000s, when George Bush was in administration at the time, I guess you're choosing your party. Are we not in wars, right? Are we not in conflicts? Is there not a financial crisis that's happened? Yet you still chose to be a Republican. So I'm wondering if that thought process then is the same thought process now.
Well, I mean, for me, when George W. Bush was president, I was apolitical. So I really started paying attention to politics during the financial collapse of '08. That's when I really, I guess, kind of started developing my own worldview. My path to politics was really about political thought and political theory, not modern day Republican, Democrat. This one's good, that one's bad. I never looked at it that way. I'm probably what you would call a classical conservative. I believe that the federal government has a couple of jobs. They should do those jobs and only those jobs. I don't believe there should be a lot of mission creep. I think the government does have to live under a sound money principle, where there is only a certain amount that you spend. You don't overspend even though you want to. That's just how I feel, and that's my personal politics. And so when I started going down that line from an economic perspective, what I realized that I agreed much more with modern Republicans than modern Democrats. That's me. I think if you talk about the wars under George W. Bush, I didn't agree with that stuff. I just didn't agree with it. I think a lot of people at the time were trying to figure out, like, why are we in these? But they attacked us on 9/11. And so like most Americans, that's kind of how I thought about it. But now being a member of Congress and even serving at the state legislature, my view is we should be strong militarily. We should keep strong bonds with our allies. But to just jump into conflicts, we should be very leery of that. I think my personal view on military uses of the military and foreign policy is that if we're going to go in and, have to handle business with the enemy, we do it quickly, we do it overwhelmingly, and then we go home. I think long-term nation building is actually quite disastrous for any country or any society. I think that's when people start to say, well, why are we spending all this money in all these different places? What are we getting out of it, et cetera? And you really lose the will of voters back home. So I really don't subscribe to that. I would say the party today versus the party when George W. Bush was president, in a lot of respects, is a very different party. We're a party much more focused on working families, on the price of goods, on people's take-home pay. We're not as concerned about corporate America, just to be blunt with you. And if you actually look at the FEC and who they give money to, corporate America, the Chamber of Commerce, they actually give more money to Democrats than they give to Republicans. Your multi-national corporations really don't mess with us. They don't fool with us that much. We've really become a working class party, and we become a party that does believe in peace through strength, but a party that does believe in peace overall. Like, we're really not trying to be in a lot of conflicts, because those are somebody's son, somebody's daughter that goes into these conflicts and fights. Typically, they're poor Americans who sign up for the military that go into these conflicts. And so, if we're going to use our military, we want it to be overwhelming force, not to put our people, at harm's way. And so that's kind of like where the party is now. That's my philosophy, but that's also where the party is. And, if you talk to Republicans on Capitol Hill, not through sound bites in the network news, because that stuff is clippy and a lot of times it's misleading. But when you talk to them, you have these conversations, whether they're on Capitol Hill or at the state level. In a lot of states, you're starting to hear more and more that the psychology of Republicans today is still about limited government, still about lowering taxes and less regulation, but it's also about making sure that working families have an ability to stand on their feet and to be able to build for their family and to have more ladders. I guess I would say to have more ladders to access our economy, which is why when I talk about regulations and energy and tax policy, its goal all the time is to make sure people have more ladders to be able to access the success capabilities in America.
My final question for you tonight. I know President Trump is given a lot of credit for the economy being better while he was in office.
Yeah.
But debt went from 17 to what, maybe 19 to 27
Yeah, it did.
trillion. So what would be done to address the debt to GDP ratio, which is ballooning past everyone's expectations? And if he got back in office, what would be done to make sure that it's curtailed and that it doesn't go up another 32% in the first 4 years if he is back in office?
Well, first of all, most of President Trump's debt actually comes from COVID-19. That goes back to the stimulus packages, when the whole world was shut down. And, to be blunt, I think any president, whether it's Trump or Obama or Biden, or Bill Clinton or George W. Bush, they would have essentially done the same thing. So, and I think when you look at his debt burden, you also have to look about when it was accumulated. Like, not all of it, I'm not going to say all of it, but easily half, a little bit more than half of it was actually brought in during COVID-19. The projected budget deficit in his last year as president, it was projected to be around 400 billion, I think maybe 500 billion at the top. Obviously, that was blown wide open. What do we do today? This is going to be really important. The number one thing we got to do today, we do have to cut spending at the federal level, and we got to take it seriously. And I know that there's a lot of people who say, well, this person needs help, that person needs help. And I recognize that. But if we just keep spending at the rate we're spending right now, well, all you're going to do is continue to devalue the American dollar. And the same people who need help are the same people who will continue to fall behind. That's not a recipe for success. So you have to level that off by stopping the overspending. President Trump is committed to that. The second thing is energy, because you need energy to then grow the economy more. And you also need to combine that with tax policy. So if you can now move your economy into a position where you're growing at 3 to 4% every single year, then the additional economic growth actually gives you the ability to now limit the amount that you borrow, and then you can start to get creative around the debt itself. Third thing about the debt, and this is the stuff where, and I'm gonna turn off the Trump surrogate hat now. I'm gonna just talk as me. We are going to have to address, and everybody in Washington knows it, even though they don't want to say it. But at some point, because both Social Security and Medicare go insolvent in 10 years, 9 years, really, you're going to have to address that. There are some very minor reforms that can be done where you can extend insolvency, which also helps us to put a cap on the overall national debt. So we're going to have to be responsible and get into some of that and not just fearmonger, because we're trying to actually save the programs. I know that my colleagues, we want to save these programs. We're not trying to end them. But if we do nothing, they're going to end themselves. Last point on national debt, it's really going to be a 20-year strategy. My career was in finance. So when you're looking at a debt burden this big, you're going to have, consistent budgeting discipline coupled with key reforms, coupled with economic growth, really over 20 to 25 years. Because the first part is you have to stabilize that debt so that you can take advantage of the savings in future years so you can begin to pay that down. That only comes if the American people choose to follow an economic agenda that gives us the strength and, frankly, the political will to get that done on Capitol Hill.
One quick follow-up. Do we have 20 years if our current payments are, 71 billion a month?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I look at the American economy is now 24, 25 trillion, somewhere around that. If you go back to it in terms of would I lend you money, a company probably could take on, probably 200% to 300% of its revenue in debt burden. We're not there yet. Now, I wouldn't touch it. I don't want to get there. I want to be honest. I don't want to get there, and I don't want to let anybody on Capitol Hill think we can get there. But can we survive where we are right now? Yes, we can. Are things going to get tough if we continue what we're doing? Yes, they will. And that's a bipartisan, nonpartisan statement. It will get worse. But we can sustain ourselves, but we got to start being smart. The thing about politics writ large that really pisses me off is that everybody wants to promise everybody everything, knowing that we can't deliver it.
Yeah.
And so let's just be real. We gotta be smart. We are a great country. We can do a lot of things, but let's be smart about what we do. Let's stabilize our debt position. Let's get out of the position of having to grow it all the time. And then if there's something that comes up, like let's say we have to get involved in a conflict that we don't want to get involved in. Or let's say you have a future pandemic that comes up, or a minor pandemic, not a major one like COVID-19. Or say, right now you have North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee dealing with Hurricane Helene fallout, Hurricane Milton, or the wildfires out in Maui.
Yeah.
If you need to address that stuff, then you have to pay for that. You have to go into your operations and pull that money from somewhere. You guys, running businesses out there, that's what you do. If something's going wrong, you just can't run to the bank every single time. Sometimes you got to look in your operations and say, all right, well, look, I got to move this money for 2 to 3 months to take care of this emergency, and then we'll smooth it out. Well, we have to start doing that same thing at the federal level. We don't do that. And so, but it's also because, for our politicians, the voters aren't demanding that we do that. And I think the voters really have to start demanding that we stop just putting everything on the credit card, because that sounds good, to be blunt, if you're 75 or if you're 60, because you're not going to be around to pay for it. But if you're 45, I'm 45, I'm going to be around to pay for it. My kids are 21, 17, 13. They're around to pay for it. It's not acceptable to me. And so we just have to be smart about it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for tapping in with us and giving a perspective from the Republican side of the aisle. I think that for a lot of people, this might be the first time that they've heard you in long form conversation. Same thing that we had with Tim Scott. We had a long form conversation. He was saying a lot of times he just gets caught up in just bits and pieces for hot takes. But I think it's
he gives those.
I think it's important is to have a full perspective on both sides, and we don't need to go viral from just having asking you if you think that she's black or not. I don't think that that's something that's.
But if you have insight,
she is. It's all good, man.
My brother.
But I appreciate.
I appreciate y'all, man. Thank
you.
Last thing I'll say, thank you for just letting me talk and actually explain myself. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
All right.
No problem.
Appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Man. Be blessed.
We didn't get the Breakfast Club energy, so I'm happy. You know what I mean? A little peaceful talk.
Yeah, for sure. It's a safe space, man. I think it's a safe space that we've been able to curate for everybody, but we're not gotcha journalists.
Yeah.
We're not trying to, put somebody in an uncomfortable situation. We might ask hard questions, but we answer the questions,
Yeah, I think you provide a platform where people can answer questions, and the audience who listens to the answers can decide on whether they believe it or not, and they can fact check it if they want and choose who they're going to vote for or not. But these are the people that are in office. These are not just these are the people in their districts, in their counties, and these are the people that are elected officials. So
you can make it.
He was candid. Incredibly candid. To give context, when Bill Clinton left office, GDP was at 54%. We're almost at 130%. George Bush would be rolling over in his political grave to see GDP this fucking high. To get to 200%.
Is George Bush dead?
No. Yeah, the dad.
The senior.
Dad died.
Senior.
Yeah. Well, what is it? George H? He's George H, and then the other one's George W.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to be junior.
Yeah. Shout out to the Bush family. I'm in Texas, so, I get a little political tea my way sometime, but GDP is insane right now. We're paying $2 billion a day in debt servicing, $72 billion a month. But you can't write off them University of Phoenix loans for African American studies and linguistic programming. Yeah. Tough, man. It's a tough time we're in.
Tough times that we're in. For all you people that said we're on the Democratic payroll.
Yeah, y'all keep saying that. And if so, I would have waved that fucking wire in y'all face for so long. I'd be like, PD Pablo waving that wire in y'all face.
South Carolina.
Hey, trust me. My number too high. But if they send it,
Democratic,
post it. I'll spin it. I'll ride around and I get it. Shout to y'all.
All right. Well, another episode of Market Mondays.
Indeed.
Yes, everybody, all you social media influencers, stay safe out there.
Please.
Don't get robbed. That's vitally important. Safety first, ladies and gentlemen.
And insurance second.
I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help the situation.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Shout out to Mike who had his birthday this weekend.
Shout out to Mike. And that amazing spades win.
I heard, he said he never lost and then backed it up by not losing.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We it's gonna be October is an interesting month for the market. It's an interesting month in life in general.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody who can survive the first month of the fourth quarter. This is when the stars perform.
Absolutely.
For sure. And Blackout,
Yes.
10 o'clock on Wednesday. We're back with EYL Live series on Thursday, 9 o'clock. How to teach your kids about money. Vitally important.
What type of energy are we coming with Blackout? What type of energy we bringing?
The same energy we're shot on right now. Liberation. You look good at the Liberty game. Jacket was fire.
That game was classic.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was there. I just seen somebody.
No, somebody hit me like, yo, you here? I'm like, where? Liberty game. I'm like, no.
Yo, I've seen events. I'm like, oh, yo, bro, that was you. That was a classic. That was a classic game. If you don't watch WNBA, like, you missed the treat. That was an absolute
some great ball going on.
Classic.
For sure. Yeah. Shout out to the Liberty.
And we rocking with New York, just for the record.
And yeah, man. It's getting real out here.
Want to tell the guests that we're gonna have or no before you go on your diatribe? I see you gearing up.
I'm trying to get us out of here.
Yeah, I'm trying to scream.
I'm trying to get us out of here.
Guess for what? A blackout?
Blackout.
Well, it's not confirmed yet for this week.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Still just trying to work on that scheduling for that.
Got you.
Right. Yeah, but great conversations. I always enjoy them, just listening to them. So great conversations.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Fella, you gotta learn the trick. If your girl want to go vacuum the hair up in your bathroom, it's because she love you. She want to see what other hairs may have been left on the floor. So we're talking blackout.
There's a topic we're gonna add to the list. It was kind of in our chat, but about finances and when it's okay. Like, yo, he left, but she left. Like,
when it's okay to what?
Well, I'll put it in the notes.
Thank you. Okay. We'll be talking.
Yeah.
All right.
Rashad, you got any final commentary? Because I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No. It's all good. It's all good. We'll see you. Miami, we on our way.
Yes.
Toronto, we on our way this weekend. Shout out to Toronto. So it's gonna be a good week of travel. So looking forward to tapping in with the people.
Travel mercies. Man.
Super safe.
Love, man. Be good to each other, man. Reach out. Text somebody that you haven't in a while. Spread love, show love, give love. And we're always going to be here for y'all until we're not.